Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. I'm just getting things ready, trying to figure out if the sound's working or not. And, oh, yeah, got to turn up the sound. Getting things ready, trying to figure out if the sound's See, working. I make the same mistake every single time. Every single time I make the same mistake, and it just bothers me. I forget to turn the sound up so I can do the sound check and everything. But that's okay. I'm just gonna wing it tonight. Yeah. Oh man, am I looking pretty tonight? I mean, there's a lot of man there. Howdy, AP 530. Hello, Prune Juice. Today we're going to talk a little bit about capitalism in America. We're going to talk a little bit about poverty. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And that's the sad. Some things in Mgtow don't change. Some of the things that we say around Mgtow, we get that same pit in our feeling with our stomach when we see it. And his sign says, "How can I work if I don't have a home?" And he's probably right. How can he work if he doesn't have a home? And we're going to talk a little bit about poverty, segments of poverty. We're going to talk a little bit about boomers, and we're going to talk a little bit about millennials and the plight the millennial has nowadays. And I'm empathetical to the plight. It's not as easy for the Xers and the Zers and the millennials to do what I did when I was when I came back the first day when I got off the bus from the army. I sat there. I looked out on the Cleveland, and I realized that I didn't have a home. I got off that bus and I realized that I didn't have a job, and I realized that man, I'd have to get busy. Within 2 weeks, I had an apartment, I had a job, I had some income coming in. People cared. Some guy gave me an apartment that he says, "You're a veteran." I says, "Yeah, I just got off the bus." He says, "I got an apartment for you." He gave me an apartment. I started looking for a job, and I went through probably 21 jobs within a about 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months, maybe up to a year and a half. I went to a lot of jobs. Sometimes I didn't like the job. I wouldn't take certain attitudes from. I wouldn't take certain attitudes from the owners. I wouldn't take certain attitudes from the managers and the bosses. One of my things is, you treat me human, or else things are going to get real bad here real fast. I'm a young, brash military man, and I'd throw my weight around, and if you didn't like it, if you treated me badly, or if you thought that you can treat me badly, you were thinking that you could treat the wrong guy badly. I'm that one guy that doesn't. I don't allow that in my life. So I went through 21 jobs in about a year and a half. You can look on my work resume and my Social Security. I can bring up your jobs and the Social Security. I can show you all the list of them. But it's not that way anymore. Things don't work that way anymore. Men can't go out and at the whim probably just find a job as he needs it, when he needs to. And that's a problem of capitalism in America today. And that's why I named this thing Capitalism in America. There's a lot of things wrong with America now. Them jobs don't exist. Mostly those jobs don't exist because when I look over we can do just a survey in my own neighborhood, and I don't think things change. I've been watching a lot of videos from a lot of these guys that travel around the country. They travel on trains, and I like that when the guys travel on the trains. And I watched a video of a recent guy. He says he was going to go from Utah to from Florida to Utah, and he was going to check out as many towns in between as he could. And he was going to talk about what the town used to be and what the town is now and what he was seeing in the towns. And I noticed peculiar resemblance to the town I live in. You come into these towns and it's usually 60, 70, up to 80% closed buildings. They used to be storefronts. Them are storefronts we're talking about. All the storefronts are gone. You look into my town, all the storefronts are gone in my town. We have a huge steel mill that only employs 300 people. We used to have a GM, but they left. We used to have a Ford, but they left. We used to have Moen Fawcett, but they left. We used to have Ridge Tool, but they left. We used to have a multitude of 100 different shops that all employed 30 to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 people. And we used to make Campana buckets up here too. I don't know if you know what Campana buckets are for mining. It's the big mining things. They go around and they're huge and they just rip into mines and they just tear out sections of ground. And we used to make them up here. We used to do shipbuilding up here. Matter of fact, Steinbrenner brought the Yankees from the money he made in this town. Then he left and took his business to Florida. Everything abandoned us in this town. This was one of the most popular. This was one of the best places to live in the world, maybe 50 years ago. The Rust Belt. You know what it's like in the Rust Belt. All of you know what it's like in the Rust Belt living in this place 50 years ago, but that doesn't exist anymore. Those jobs don't exist. You can't go from job to job and learn new skills, and there's no trade skills, and there's no unions going, hey, come on, I'll teach you how to lay brick, or I'll teach you how to be a millwright, or I'll teach you how to be a lubricator, or I'll teach you how to work with metal. For the young men in America, you go to school, you go to college, most of those college classes will never relate to anything that happens out there in the real world, and you're never going to learn a real skill unless you take a machining class. And then I wanted to show you this little thing of the town. Now, you guys hear me talk a lot about the town that sits next to my town. It's it's the town on the other side of the tracks. The other side of the tracks, I can look over the river, and I see what my town is. It's normal town. It's broke. It's busted. Everything's left. And then I look over the river, and I get to look at one of the richest cities in the United States. I get to look at their $500,000 homes, all in perfect rows, all on an acre and a quarter. That somehow is the largest areas of lands within a town. An acre and a quarter within that town of that population is the most in pretty much Ohio. I get to look over that, and I wonder sometimes what happened there that didn't happen here. How did that work out like that? And how did we end up like we did? Like I said, George Steinbrenner and Spitzer both ran to New York and took their businesses out of this place, and then Ford left, and then GM left. You hear these stories about that place up in Michigan. I can't remember the town. That didn't just happen in there. When GM, it was just that what's his name made a movie about that, and Roger Smith and I, or whatever it was, he made a movie about that, and that happened in a lot of places, including this town here, and in America, and it left a lot of that. How can I work if I don't have a house? Capitalism in America had failed us. They'll say their jobs. We always notice that every time an election year comes up, there's 1,000 jobs signs up, and then when you go to put an application in, those jobs don't really exist. They'll run the ads, but they're just booting the numbers up to make it look like, ooh, look what I did for this country. But he really didn't do nothing, because those are fake jobs. Stock market's doing good, and if you have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $6 million bucks to invest in the stock market, you're pretty good. But well, if you had $6 million bucks in the stock market, you wouldn't be looking for a job, would you? So a lot of things happen in this thing, and I wanted to screen share one of these little things. And I have a lot of empathy for the Xers and the Zers now, because man, I can't imagine what these guys are going through. And I wanted to show you what happens. Let's do a little infinity screen here. And then I'm going to go to this right here. It's the town that I'm next to. The average median income in that town is 92,000, which is well above. It's that was in 2016, but it's well above 2,000, 112,000. The average person makes $112,000 in that town. The gender by wage is it's pretty much the average female makes 73,000. The average male makes 99,000. That's the split demographics. This is the wage distribution. I don't even know if you guys are seeing that. I don't know. I hope you guys are seeing that. I don't know if you're seeing it, but so if you are seeing it, just bear with me. But there's one little stat that this is the area where these people work. There's one little stat right here that bothered me. Poverty by age and gender. Poverty by age and gender. 20 to 25, 25 to 34 male. 25 to 34 represents 34.4% of the poverty in the richest town, one of the richest towns in America. These people are so rich that they don't even have Asian people or Hispanic people in their country, in their little town. It's mainly white. It's mainly upper management, education, business, office administration, and then you have a small segment over here of maintenance people and occupational jobs. We can go through this whole thing and I can show you the demographics, but what really stuck out at me, what really stuck with, is that big bar right there in the middle. 25 to 34 is the biggest of males is the biggest population of poverty in one of the richest areas in the country. And I can look over into this town every day and I can see what I can see it. And this is what I see in my town because they destroyed us. But if a male from 25 to 34 is not working, and that represents probably 34% of that town, that's pretty sad. That's pretty sad. You could zoom in a bit. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm still, I could have did the clear plus thing. Yeah, I forgot to do the clear plus thing. I'm sorry. But that represents the poverty in America, and it represents capitalism in America. What happened to capitalism? What went wrong with this thing where we have towns that have outgrown the children in it? If you look at the representative of people my age, 55, 53, 50, I think it was 45 to 55, you'll see that they're doing rather well in there. They're the major holders of that $112,000, pay rate, but their children are doing horrible. Their children are doing. What kind of legacy are we leaving our children when we're doing great and our children are doing horrible or can't find the correct jobs or the correct training, or get the correct education, or maybe they're just lazy kids that grew up in $500,000 houses that have no idea. I don't know if that's. I mean, that will be one of the accusations by most people. Those kids, those millennials, they just don't want to work. I don't believe that. I believe something happened with capitalism. And when I look at this guy here in back of me, that guy right there, I know there's something wrong. What a beautiful little red dog he's got there. That's a beautiful dog. He's got everything right there in that red dog. I hope he knows it. Because he's homeless, and homelessness is something that Mgtows are always going to be concerned with. Why do these things happen? What made men homeless? What was the failures of capitalism where the biggest demographic in your town is men 25 to 34? Really? Used to be that was the biggest demographic of people that were working. Males 25 to 34 were the biggest. That's right after college. That's you take your year off and party and go to the Bahamas and come back, and then you start your work career. 25 years old. Yeah, Forrest, that would be interesting. I'd like to do the stats on incarceration of the population's poor, and how many of these men. There's probably a lot of things that a lot of little things that go into it. And I was waiting for a guest to come in, and he was going to talk about it a little too. And I was, you know, what are those things that contribute to this homeless problem that males are having? I hear a lot of, there's a lot of lighter than work air jobs out there, which feminism has created. And I see all those storefronts closed. I know that's a problem. But in that thing, we talk about what happened to all those storefronts, which probably employed, in my town, you see nothing but 80% closed storefronts. And that's common to most towns nowadays. What happened to those storefronts? Well, capitalism happened to it. Walmart happened to it. Kmart, Walgreens, big chain stores open that are have IPOs and are sitting on the stock market. Amazon. Now, I don't blame Amazon too much for that, because you know what Amazon is, and Amazon is a marketplace of a million different people, a million different storefronts that all these people sell things on Amazon. It's like eBay. It's like Craigslist. eBay, Craigslist, Amazon, where I bought this. My buddy bought me this shirt this week. I was saying I had a hard time finding a triple X Levi Strauss shirt, so he sent it to me in the mail. But he bought it on eBay for me, and I was thanks, dude. I was having a really hard time finding one of these, and but he bought it on one of those e-markets, and those are 1,000 little stores that have a meta storefront, is what they call it, and that's what happened. But regardless, in your small town, you have bakers that don't sell bakery because they can't compete with the dollar a loaf. Let me close that out. I got a thing. They always do it to me when I'm busy. They put one of those. Your antivirus protection is about to run out. I hate you people. So we got all these. There's no bakers. There's not the meat market. There's no butcher. There's no donut shop. In this area alone, we have a Subway. We have a convenience store, which you can get it's really ridiculous. You can get a little thing of coffee creamer for $3.85, which will cost you $1 at any other store in the world. And that's what happens. It drives up the roads. I live in a food desert here. We have one store. We have a Save-A-Lot. And if you don't make it to the Save-A-Lot, you're at the will of 10 little convenience stores that all jack up the price 3x on everything. So we don't have bakers. The whole city used to, employ maybe 1 or 2 kids here, 3 or 4 kids. The butcher used to employ, the sausage maker used to employ kids, young men. And you learned a skill, and you had that. When I was growing up, you can move in and out of those jobs quite frequently. The pizza, we used to have 2 pizza shops around here, very good pizza. Now we have 1. We don't have an Asian store around here anymore. We don't have we don't even have a way to get Chinese food delivered. Is that ridiculous? I live in the only place in a country where you can't get Chinese food delivered. and it's the result of one thing. It's a declining market of there's no steel mill. There's nobody living here. And I wanted to talk a little today about predatory capitalism. Well, what my opinion of predatory capitalism was, back in the early 15s, you had the company, early 15, 20, we had the company stores where these big steel mills, they moved in and they started the company stores, and then they started selling the houses. The company bought the houses in the area and built all of these. They're little Ford houses, we call them. They built Ford built houses for their workers, and that's what still stands here. And they're $60,000, $70,000 houses. And you work for Ford, or you work for the steel mill, or you work for GM around here, and you can buy the houses, but the United States in its wisdom said that's company store. They open up stores, and you got credit lines, and then all of a sudden they laid a bunch of guys off, and they were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to take your house back, and they would do that over and over and over again. That was predatory capitalism. So they made laws against that. What we have now is a same form of the same thing. It's a predatory capitalism, but the city itself has become the governor of all that horror. You had a GM, you had a Ford, you had and they're paying taxes to the city, and the city had become something better. And we pay the same amount of taxes for my $60,000 house here. And I was looking at that thing that they pay for the $500,000 houses in across the river there. Same amount of taxes. So what the city's doing is they're leeching on the poverty of the city now, and they're becoming there's nothing left, so they're becoming the company store. They're taking houses from people that can't afford the taxes, and they're gentrifying. And that's coming to my town, and sooner or later, my town will become that town. And it's a history-rich little little fishing town, and then they're going to put up all their vacation homes around here, and I won't have a town to live in anymore. So the government has become the progenitor of what? That right back there. Homelessness. Now, when you talk about your government and you talk about the people that are responsible to keep men working and keep men out of homelessness, you're talking about your government. They're supposed to be the people that make sure that doesn't happen, not be feeding into a predatory system of real estate that takes houses from men. Every time a company moves out of an area, 2,000, 3,000 people that were working in that company all lose their houses. And then they'll say, oh, well, the company didn't own those houses. Well, the city owns those houses pretty much now, and they become the same company store and predator to the people. They have to start feeding on something, and they will start feeding on their own population. And that's what happened around here. You can look all around and you see baby mamas and government housing and drugs, and everywhere you found the baby mamas, you're going to find drugs, and you're going to find the government housing and the government daddies taking houses from people like me and my neighbors and everybody and making them into government houses. And then this guy right here is, how can I work when I can't have a home? And this guy probably paid for 2 or 3 homes in his life. I myself have paid for 3 homes in my lifetime. I myself have paid for my first home 3 times over, and then paid for 2 other homes after that. You know how those things happen. Each and every one of you know how those things happen. A man will end up paying for 3 houses in his lifetime if he continues to participate in this system of predatory marriage, predatory capitalism, predatory housing, and predatory governments. Who do they prey on? Well, they prey on you and me. They prey on you and me. Let me see how see how Rob's doing there. Rob See was gonna come in today, and I was seeing what he had to say about this whole thing, and I will put up the link here in case anybody wants to come in and talk about this. I will put up the link, and we could talk about it if you want, and you can give your opinion of what you see in America now. Do you see more of this guy, or do you see you see a lot of those $500,000 houses with people across the river like me that, well, we're not doing that great anymore. The middle class is dead, but I have a big problem. The middle class became these, hey, I'm hearing you Going to be done with dinner soon. Okay. We're talking in the background. What do you see in your areas? What do you see happening in this country? If you live in America, if you don't, what do you see happening in your country? I would say most of us live in capitalistic countries that resemble each other and resemble what we do. Just because you're on YouTube, and if you lived in a foreign country like China or a socialist country, they wouldn't let you talk on YouTube. Or you'd have your own YouTube where you can say what they wanted you to say, you know. But I see more of this. I'm really empathetic with the millennials and the Zers and X, and I know they're mad. I know they're mad at boomers. They think it was the boomers, but I often tell them what's going to happen anyways, and it's not the boomers. Who is it? Who's the progenitor of those problems? Who made those problems happen? Well, it's a capitalist system. When we have what's his name from Amazon got divorced, went down to 55. How much did he have? He was worth $326 billion, and then he went down to like half of that, and now they valued his company at the newest $1 trillion company. So he's back up, and within a year, and within a short time, he's got a new girlfriend, and that's what great privilege affords you. Yeah. You can afford a divorce. Most of these guys out here, they can't afford a divorce. I can't afford a divorce. None of you guys can afford a divorce. That thought is of horror. Oh my God, I make a regular amount of money like a regular working guy, and I got to give 1/3 to the government. I got to give 1/3 to her, or over half to her, and then plus a couple of kids, and then I'm left with what to live on. It's horror, and that's what most of the people I see out there, homeless men, run into, and then that becomes apathy, horror and apathy in America. That's what someone should write that book, Horror and Apathy in America, because something's really gone wrong. But our middle class, if you're somewhere between 45 and 55, is doing really well. They're still making the big bucks, being the managers. They're the managers of all the systems. And pretty much what they're saying when they say all these managerial jobs is they work for the government. Now you've seen towns like Syracuse, New York, which is the capital of New York. What's the capital of New York? I look at the demographics of workers in those towns, and 80% of those people work for the government. And it's a swell place to live. The average house rate is well over $285,000 to $300,000, and everybody's doing great, but somebody's paying for that. Because they work for the government. So who's paying for that? You and I. Every time we get our houses taxed to death, every time we get our paychecks taxed to death, and every time you go to the food market, and here in Ohio, we got betrayed totally by our government. They were supposed to be either house taxes or food taxes, and then they got their house taxes, and then they jacked those up to the highest amount that they could. And then a couple of years ago, they came back and they said, we're going to tax the grocer on the back end. We're going to tax him, the guy that owns the store, on all these sales. And you know what he's going to do? He's going to add that taxation to the price of the food, and it'll be backdoor taxes. He come in from the back, and that's what they did to us Ohioans, and they don't think anybody's seen it, and they don't think we're pissed about it. So we're paying double taxes here. So they can have what? So they can have those big buildings. Here in my town, we have barely 200,000 people in this whole county. But we have 6-7 office buildings that are mega, you know, those ones with the big pillars, the government buildings with the big pillars. And we got the finest police stations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the finest prisons. We got a big prison system in this town. And they built them, and they forgot to take care of the schooling system. And I'll tell you what, if you forget to take care of the schooling system, one thing's for sure, and two's for certain, that you are going to need that prison system, especially in a town with such poverty as us. Now it's poverty incorporated. How do we make money off of the poor? How do we make money off of the poverty? That's what the government around here has become, a predatory system that makes money off of poverty incorporated. I've explained that to you guys a million times over. Capitalism does not put the check on greed, encourage vast income equality. Yeah, capitalism is income. Poverty is income equality. I don't know why these people. It's a flyby on our governors and our senators and on our congressmen. Well, they're not impoverished, so they have no idea. There is a feminist thing that I agree with. It's called standpoint epistemology of feminism, and they said if you don't know what it's like to be impoverished, you ain't never going to know what it's like to be impoverished. You shouldn't be a senator or a governor. Oh, that's feminist epistemology. They are right on a few things, but it's all basically capitalism. Now the feminists will say it's all these white guys. It's all these white guys your age, Joe. These and I'm saying no, it's not the white guys, man. It's just I just lived in a different time, and it's not much easier for me. And I'll tell you what, try getting 55 years old in an economy like this. When you're competing for jobs, you get looked right over. We talk about this all the time with my friend Joey Aragon. Try getting older in an economy like this, and you have to start competing for jobs. Yeah, I can't lift that 300 pounds anymore. I wish I could pick up a big arrow, put it on my shoulder, and like walk around with 300 pounds. Merging the media class with the poor class. Yeah, that's what they did. They merged the medium class with the poor class, and more people became poor. And then when you look at the demographics, the middle class, it still looks like, oh, everybody's making like $55,000-$60,000 a year, when in reality everybody's making like pretty close to 24,000, and two people in every household have to work. Especially in a town like this. But what we talk about in Mgtow is why this? Why this? Most of these guys, like I said, we know the reasons for why this. Guys like me end up paying 3 times over for houses when a predatory system of feudalism that's called our housing market in America, and it's a feudal housing market, keeps eating everything and keeps taking back. They're like little Pac-Men. They eat and they take back. They eat and they take back. And the government assists. And the government sits back and assists them in its predatory actions. And it causes poverty, and it causes up to 800,000 of these guys a year to be on the street without a house. 89% of the population of the homeless are men. You got to start asking some questions. And a lot of them are young men nowadays. You used to see a lot of old men like me, gray beards, limping around with a leg cut off, homeless. But it's not just the old gray beards anymore. It's working its way down. I showed you the demographics in that town earlier. Poverty rate for men 25 to 34 was the greatest in one of the wealthiest towns in America. How does that happen? How does that happen? How do we permit this? But it's the same old, and you know the story, and I know the story. It's the disposable male. When you become the disposable male, you get sick, she gets unhappy, anything. Me too'd, accused of something. You get thrown in jail, and you might never find a job. They'll keep you in that system nowadays forever. When they ask you if you get thrown in jail, when they ask you if you want parole, you just say, no, I'll spend my full time. And I know a few guys out there that said, hey, no, parole, they'll just suck you back into the system, charge you with new charges, and you're going to end up back here with more time. Corporate prisons, we've seen enough of that. We've seen enough of that. And our Afro-American brother fills 80% of those corporate prisons now. There's I don't know. Yeah,
Hello.
I'll use the back. Hello, how you doing? I got to put on my earphones here.
Hold on. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, I just got to
Give me
turn
1
up.
second because I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, you're having a hard time hearing me? Okay. You probably have to turn your sound. I do it every single time. I forget to turn my sound up. And it's like it drives me nuts how I forget that. When I'm getting old, I'm not. I want to Rob See. Rob See brought up the topic today, and I think I appreciate it when the guys bring up the topic for me because I don't have to do the thinking, and that's one of the things. And with my migraines lately, that I can't do. I can't do the thinking and the study anymore. And in case you came in late, the topic today is predatory capitalism. Capitalism in America, is it getting bad? Is it getting worse? Is it getting intolerable? And that's it. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Went out today. I talk like this, but I went out today. We got a sandwich at my restaurant that I go to, and my life is pretty good. And when I look around me, sometimes I feel real bad about other people's lives, and my life's okay. And I got my sandwich today. I came home. I fell asleep on the couch with my fat belly, and it was okay. And my buddy looks across from me once in a while and he says, Joe, we do have it pretty good in America.
Yeah,
but
I have to agree with that.
but for some people, it's not that good anymore, and it's starting to offset itself. Did you see the statistic I put up?
No, I did not.
Okay, it's there's a town across from me. It's one of the richest towns in America. It's where all the sports stars from Cleveland live, and the average income is $98,000 or $112,000 in that town. All the houses we go through it, and it's all the houses are $500,000-$600,000. But when you look at the stats for that town, all the people between, oops, did we lose you?
Oh no, I turned my camera off since it's lagging.
Okay.
Sorry.
When we look at the stats for that town, who would you think would be the major? What would you think would be the poverty in that town? Who would represent that group?
I would think it would be mostly men.
It's mostly men between 25 and 34 years old. That year after college, in that town, they represent 34% of the poverty. And if
Wow.
that's not an indication of the broken, and 98% of them are white men too. And it's
98%?
98% of that town is white. And I was just
Wow.
shocked when I seen that figure of, and I hear the complaints of the Zers and the Xers and the millennials, but until you see something like that, you can't. It's standpoint ophthalmology. I never lived it, so I can't see it. But now I can see it in stats. Something's gone wrong here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would agree with that. And from a Mgtow perspective, one thing I noticed with the way our society approaches these issues is they seem to want to assist females who are having these issues, and men. It seems like there's this sort of callousness towards men, where men are just expected to, you know, create your own destiny in life or something, and
Yeah,
women are not held to that same standard.
fit into the system that was made for you. But was it really made for us, or was it made for all of us to share? Yeah, that's the thoughts on that. Yeah, it's now I did notice 43% of the females in that town were nurses, which is astounding, or work for the medical community, the healthcare. And healthcare could be vast nowadays. That could be anything from health and human services to old age homes. In between would call themselves healthcare nurses. Uh, but young men in the trades are it's dying off. The trades that we used to be able to go into when I was young.
Yeah, absolutely. And you used a yeah, you and I think you used the phrase earlier, global capitalism.
Yeah.
And really when uh, we really began this globalism and free trade thing, which free trade is not necessarily a bad thing, but
No.
what happened with the United States is the owners, the people who own the factories and stuff, realized that, well, if the politicians are going to open up the markets and I can just go build my factory in a third world country, then, my profits increase, and but the people who get left behind are, blue collar workers who relied on those jobs. And, the I don't know. When it comes to you said something there. You said we have some responsibility to our people, in the
Right.
country.
In the country.
And I agree strongly with that. But I think, yeah, I think there's like a general zeitgeist though of the
Mm-hmm.
country now, where it's almost sociopathic.
Right.
Where it's like the only person I care about is myself. If I somehow made a way, if I somehow managed to get a decent paying job and my cost of living is not outrageous, well, guess what? I guess capitalism worked out for me. And if it didn't work out for you, that must be because there's something wrong with you individually.
Right.
Whereas I think in the past, and this may not be true, but I think if you look at the United States from like post World War II to like the 70s or so, I think it would people generally had a more community oriented way of thinking,
Hmm.
and it's a very complicated issue, because you had a more homogenous society at that time. You had basically, you didn't have all this technology where an employer could have their one factor of their production in India and one factor in New York and one factor in Mexico. And there's no real like local sort of accountability. If there's a factory owner that has a factory in a local town, and when he goes to the grocery store he sees his employees and stuff, that's a little bit different than, well, I'm just going to build my factory in Taiwan. Or Taiwan's not really a great example.
China.
Let's say um, uh, China,
Or
and then we'll just ship the
the
products here
Philippines.
and
Yeah.
people will buy them. So,
Yeah, where I can get people to work
yeah,
for me.
globalism has been has majorly impacted, local economies. And, that's why I think Trump was elected,
Yeah.
because a lot of these people, like you're talking about your community that you live in, and you see it around you. You see like me, when I walk outside of my house, I I see so many homeless people. Like if I walk down the street to Walmart, which is maybe a quarter mile from me, I
Yeah.
probably see 6 or 7 homeless people.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And
That's a
I
problem.
don't think it's just I don't think they're just aberrant individuals. I think the system let them down.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. When we see the Walmart and then we see the storefronts closed, there's always that argument between the delicate balance of your community and bringing these huge mega corporations, which nobody can compete with. Now I looked into starting like an Amazon, and I talked about Amazon and the pluses of starting an Amazon store. And the first thing I had to do was take a loan, and I was going to start a towel store. Uh, I can get towels made in China and Pakistan for a certain amount, and I can have them shipped over in bundles. And every one of the bundles would cost me $5,000, and I'd bring over several different brands and everything. But by the time shipping and tariffs were done, and every one of the bundles would cost me $5,000, and
people will buy them. So
yeah, your
when I walk outside of my house, I probably see six or
your
seven.
browsers. By the time shipping and tariffs were done, and every one of the bundles would cost me $5,000. Rob, your browser's on. Where's my browser? Okay. So, Rob dropped out. Okay, when I see those Amazon stores popping up and everything, I can I compete with that Walmart on the prices? And I soon found out that I can't offer a price the same prices they can offer on those things. I can't offer a good price, so I have to rely on people to generally, or I have to promote my product in an Amazon store that this is a better product than you're going to get at Kmart, which is really not true. It's probably the same product, or I have to rely on better marketing, and I have to do twice the amount of work so I can sell and make. I don't even know at that point after I crunched all the numbers whether I can make device not connected. Okay. Add to stream. There we go. You dropped out there, Rob.
Yeah, for some reason the audio cut out, and so I just quit and then rejoined. I can hear you now.
Yeah, I heard the browser going in the background, so the browser was on. And then
Yeah, I jumped. I wanted to hear what you were saying because I couldn't hear you through my phone, so I opened the browser up on my computer.
Oh, that always drops. I don't know why that does. I tried that the other day, switching between my phone and a regular browser on the computer, and it didn't go anymore. And I was wondering, well, that's strange. I was always able with the Google Hangouts to switch between. It would bring both of them in, but now it won't bring both of them in.
Yeah, there probably was a conflict there. So I just closed Google Hangouts on my computer. So hopefully that will help.
Yeah. So what I was talking about, even with global, I can evolve myself in that kind of global system if I wanted to, through open an Amazon store, open an eBay store, open a that kind of store. But can I really compete with the Kmart?
No, you can't. No way.
I can't compete with the guy selling 2 million of those towels.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where my main criticism of capitalism comes from.
Yes.
It comes from most people. When most people talk about capitalism, they want to talk about freedom. They say, "Oh, communism, reduces freedom, and you get gulags, and et cetera, et cetera." But here the way that I approach it is, the capitalist has the power. Yes, he's doing you a favor by giving you a job, but at the same time, the thing that motivates you to go get the job is the fact that you need wages to survive.
Right.
So if I need something from this person in order to survive, and then I have to enter into an agreement with them, which really they're the ones that are dictating the terms. They say, well, hey, look, you're going to do this on this machine, and you're going to do it for this many hours, and this is your schedule. And if you don't comply with their terms, you get fired, and that's your means of existence are now gone.
Right, your means of existence. I forget what they called that. I was looking at it earlier today, but Yeah, that's a harsh reality, and especially when everybody's competing for those same jobs, and they can get, yeah, I see a lot of these jobs now. My son works for a lot of them where they'll keep him 90 days, and right before he gets in whatever promise was made, he gets health care, or he gets whatever the laws that are about that, they'll fire him. And then they'll just bring in a new guy at a low wage because they can keep going through. It doesn't matter which person is moving those boxes or hanging those things on the hangers, as long as it's happening, and the human machinery is the same, and the personality doesn't matter to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing to build on that point you just made is that the labor people engage in to earn a wage is not really important to the person. They will do a job that is in close proximity to their home that will hire them in order for them to be able to pay their rent. So
Right.
the majority of people the majority of people are spending 40 hours, if they're lucky to get full time, a week doing something they don't really want to do. And so they're exchanging their life, for money.
For money, for
And this trend,
things they need.
yeah, and right. And so the whole process of the way our economy functions, which is really dictate the terms of the functioning is dictated by those who have the power and the money,
Mm-hmm.
is really a process of each individual person being alienated from themselves,
Right.
because their labor becomes a commodity to bargain with the capitalist. So they say, okay, I'm gonna do this job. I don't care about the job. I don't like the job. This is just a way for me to pay my bills.
Right.
So that
Right. To
so the
survive,
majority of
you're
people
saying.
on this, yeah,
To survive, to live, and not to freeze to death in a cold Ohio. And what really bothers me about this system is the feudal system that we live within the real estate system now. It's almost become a predatory feudalistic system where I just witnessed. We did a study on what was that filthy little company, L'Oreal, from France. Uh, L'Oreal was big in this area. Well, L'Oreal decided to pick up and leave, but they started the same company down south where they can pay people less, and 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 why they did it was always a big question for me, because you had 2,000 people that all had houses in that community, and then it started making sense. It's like, yeah, L'Oreal is the same people that own that housing market or buy in heavily to the housing market and on the stock market. So every one of those people lose their job, and you lose their job, lose their houses. Those houses recirculate back into they're highly invested in those systems, so it becomes advantageous for corporations to move and keep moving.
oh, absolutely,
It's a
yeah.
reciprocal system of poverty for poor people. We've dealt with this big time in Ohio with the Steubenville Company. I suppose most of the people around here that are Americans have heard of the Steubenville Ford plant. When those companies move, those communities go into, and then our own country, our own government becomes the predatory system, which is going to force loss of and homelessness on people. That's not a system I can give the thumbs up to. And if you ever owned,
yeah, absolutely, or
if you owned houses like I have, and I have the plus of age, so I paid on houses for 30 years. I paid 3 times the amount for that house because of a predatory, capitalistic system that got me for interest and high mortgage rates and stuff like that. And at the end, with my divorce, I still didn't own that house, and they took it from me. And I paid 3 times the amount over a 20-some year period.
oh yeah, the way the usurious loans are just make you pay 3 times the actual value of the property.
Yeah.
It's just a completely absurd system,
And that goes for
and
the extreme.
then somebody will, yeah, exactly. Like you said, the people that are able to participate in that sort of speculative, um, use of their capital to be the landlord, to be the bank, to be the employer. Those are the people that were rich, So it's a system that it recreates itself over and over and over. And the reason is because of the asymmetrical distribution of power.
Right. Yeah.
If so, we like to claim that, oh well, this system maximizes freedom for people. You have but in a negative utilitarian conception of freedom, yes, that's true. We're all equal before the law. Okay, yeah, and I'm not, and I know that the arguments that men have, are screwed over in divorce courts and stuff like that. Yeah, that's not really what I'm saying right here, because I do agree with that.
Yeah.
But what that would be, that's the philosophical conception. It's known as negative liberty, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And then there's positive, yeah, the freedom from, and then there's the positive, which is the freedom to. That's where we get robbed, because we don't have the freedom. We don't have the freedom to. We either comply, or
Yeah.
like you said, we sleep out in the Ohio winter.
Yeah. No. Yeah. We see the resonances of these things. Now I don't know if you ever read Kapakov or
Mm-mm.
the early Marxists, and they were talking about these things.
Kropotkin?
Kropotkin, yeah, the quest for bread.
Yeah, I haven't sat down and read the whole thing, but I am familiar with some of his arguments.
Yeah, Prokopkin, and then that goes to Durkheim. Durkheim was probably he's my favorite philosopher during that, with that argument between socialism and the proletariat, and the Engels and Marx cover it and everything, but they get a bad name. Most people don't realize that he was just prognosticating what's going to happen. He didn't manufacture it. He prognosticated it. But Prokopkin and Durkheim, and Durkheim goes deep into some Mgtow subjects with the suicide rate goes up, the what happens in societies like us when things get too difficult, the suicide rate goes up. When people don't believe they can secede anymore, the suicide rate goes up. Things like that. And we can see this thing playing out. And I can see with the younger guys that 60% of the younger guys nowadays believe in socialism.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is because a lot of the young people, the millennials and now the Zoomers coming up,
Yeah.
is
Zoomers.
we grew up we grew up during the really we've had to bear the brunt of the Great Recession,
Yeah.
characterizing our coming of age, and if you look at the cost of things nowadays, if you look back in like the 60s compared to now,
Mm-hmm.
and you adjust for inflation, housing costs about 2.5 times more than it used to. Education is almost triple, and healthcare is the same as housing, 2.5 times more expensive.
Yeah.
So while there are some things that are cheaper, like electronics are cheaper, food has either remained the same or become cheaper.
No.
But
food has gone up 3 times. I can tell you, when I just looking in the store today, a pack of that regular breast chicken, not the breast chicken, the tops of the legs, the cheap stuff, is $1.68. That used to be 39 cents a pound.
$1.68, that's expensive.
It's $1.68 where I live, because I live in a food desert too. It's no longer 99 cents a pound, which is reasonable. It's tripled in price, and that's just in the last 4 or 5 years that it hit that extra 68 cents. So food in my area, in the poor areas, has been going up steadily. We look at the housing, the cost, but these false markets that are holding up our economy, and I call them false markets, this electronics and stuff. You don't need these things to live. There's no hierarchy. It doesn't say in any hierarchy of needs that you need a computer.
Right.
So that's a false market to be human. When we're talking about human markets, we're talking about food, housing, energy, water, fresh water, which we see big problems with fresh water now. And basic heating, depending on your climate, stuff like that, so you can stay alive. But these are the things that are in question now. These are the things that are inflated terribly, and then, like you said, they put that against things that have dropped in price, like computers and Chinese goods and cups and like foot powder, which you really don't need to survive. And somebody's got to do an honest assessment of these things. Because I think that you'll see that living in America costs somewhere from 1990 to now probably costs 3 times as much. But they'll say, oh, no, there hasn't been that kind of inflation, because they're lying about the inflation because you have these false markets.
Yeah, absolutely. And, look at wages. Wages have essentially been basically stagnant. Yeah, since I think it's 1964, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think it was some. Wow. No, I remember my father's check when I was a kid. He would show it to me when he came up the driveway once. When I say, "Dad," it's like, "Wow, I love you so much. Did you get paid today?" And he'd show me his check. And it's like, we're all going out tonight, And we had a family of 11 too, so it's like, and he made pretty good money. He had a good job, and I remember his check. And then at one point in like 2000 or something, I remember that I was still making what he was making in the 60s. I thought that was I was like, oh man, that's like our wages have stagnated. But they'll lie to us in the graphs and the charts. You took algebra. Probably the first thing your algebra teacher taught you is like, stats lie. We can make anything seem like anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we get firsthand experience of that in Mgtow with the wage gap argument.
Yeah, the wage gap argument is a good thing, but the stats lie. I can make it look like this when it's not really. It's a different problem, and identifying these different problems is our problem.
You know what I find the most hilarious about that is that the research paper that actually demonstrated that women earn 70 cents on the dollar for men, it literally says in the paper.
Yeah,
it says this is, if you account for, we all know the argument, but it's literally right there in the original research paper, but people will still.
The study of Simpsons at Berkeley.
What's it called?
The Simpsons paradox, when they did the study of what courses and classes were offered to. It's a mathematical paradox. What courses and classes were offered to men and what courses and classes were offered to women. And they found out that 7 courses and classes were offered to women, 3 courses and classes, tech classes, were offered to men. But they're saying the analogy was we have to do more for women. It's a paradox.
Crazy.
And
absolutely.
It's the same thing with the wage gap. The simple idea is that I would like to see women have the opportunity in the healthcare, and this is where I agree with, if they can get proper childcare, and our system should support these things. And this is where our system lacks in supporting these things. If they want to be single baby mamas, fine. I'm not going to argue feminism no more in my life. If you want to do this, you can get proper child care, and then you can go work 40 hours, the same as that guy standing next to you working 40 hours, making exactly the same amount of money.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that's that just the thing about the affordable child care not being available to females in the system. that just highlights another big problem that we face is that our government is not in service to the people. Our government is in
Right.
service to the rich and powerful. And the reason is it goes back to the argument that I made earlier about the asymmetrical distribution of power.
Mm-hmm.
If power is ever more concentrated into fewer and fewer hands, those are the people that are going to be able to advocate for their own interests. They did this study where they found that I think it was 50% of the policies that were desired by rich people are adopted,
Okay. Yeah.
but policies that are desired by working class people, 0% adoption rate. And
Yeah.
so that's basically all that is that rich people buying our government and actually taking care of people. That's not, they don't care about that. They just want tax cuts.
Yeah. That happened in
You know,
60s with, I can't remember the name of the bill, and it's a common name of the bill that let them do that. It's often mentioned on some of the other podcasts and everything, but I can't remember it offhand. Which just let the rich buy power. But in that,
that's the one where where the Supreme Court ruled that when a corporation spends money, it's free speech because corporations are people. Therefore, you can't limit corporate spending in politics because it's a violation of the corporation's First Amendment right.
Right. Yeah. I can't remember the name of that. I should be able to, but I'm getting old. But yeah, what was it called? I can't remember. If someone would look it up but yeah, there's a difference between authoritarian power too, and sort of a round table power where we all share, all Americans vote, and we share our power through our vote, and that's out the door now. And influencing vote has become so popular. I mean, how you influence the vote, is just scream baby mamas, and then all the men will go nuts, and and then you'll have that demographic under it, and it's like men don't understand sexual cryptis, and if you want, you can have it one of two ways. You can have traditionalism that's going to come back and bite you in the form of child support and your response and a male role of responsibility. Or you can have a more liberal system that you pay taxes into a system that doesn't get uselessly spent, and it goes to child care for women that can go to work, and then they can add to the society. Now, I'd rather like to think that most Mgtows see the difference and would like to assist in that and say, this will promote agency and responsibility, and I don't care who the daddy is. And that leaves me off the hook for being that traditional role of a father. But as long as we have the Christians telling us that you're not allowed to have Mormonism and you're not allowed to have other ideas, and you have to be this illusionary thing, which is a social construct of father, they can hold you responsible to being the responsible party in that gender role. Now, if we want to talk gender roles, let's talk about gender roles that males, like the voluntary actions that we do, that we volunteer for our own slavery. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, in a certain way, I do agree with that. Because really, it's our daily. Trying to use the right words here. Our daily activities, going and working and reproducing our boss's profits so that we can, get wages, and the things that we do on a daily basis really allow the system to reproduce itself. But at the same time, there's also a component of coercion in it too, because we don't really have a choice unless
that's the
everybody just
coming out now. The men are going, the juice isn't worth the squeeze now. I don't want to participate, but they don't know what they don't want to participate in. They're saying, I don't want to be that gender role anymore because that gender role doesn't work for me, but they don't know how to articulate that. but it's a system of coercion that forces you through this religious system that's been around since World War II, which I call the two tenets of barbarism. I mean, we picked the wrong horse. And then those laws came down to now. They've developed, and it says, well, you're a man, you're going to take responsibility, and you're going to be the one we're going to come after. But with this work in this capitalist system where there's a lot more of us failing now, we can't possibly take on those roles.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I think marriage rates are declining. And they did this survey, and it showed that from men 18 to 29, I think it was like somewhere between 10 and 20%. I can't remember exactly. Had never had sex.
Oh,
And in my opinion, I don't, and I'm not shaming men. I don't think sex is the end all be all of everything. But what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you in that because of the economic dimensions of what's going on, men are not able to be in that role that we're expected to be in, where women expect you to, buy them stuff and take them on a date and have a house. And, so they're going to go for the guy that has that stuff, which is now a minority of men, so.
Yeah, now that's up to them to fix them problems and make women, give them agency, give them that support that they need, and give them the ability to move up. But I still think that when I do see them kind of relationships now, women aren't programmed to do those roles, to be the household provider. And what happens is the male becomes disposable, and they start running through men. Now, men in those situations, all they really want is a wife that'll have babies and maybe cook a dinner. And they don't complain about, they don't switch the role. They don't go, okay, I can have her and her and her and her and her and her and her, and I just get rid of them as they come. But when women are put into those roles, they've never had to experience the traditional farming roles. It's not programmed into them by what do you call that, DNA, when these social things get programmed into us.
Epigenetics.
Epigenetics. They don't get that. There's an honor in that. Okay, if you're going to be the provider here, you're going to have to take that role, and you just can't get rid of a guy, the husband. And that's where it's okay for women to be polygamistic, and that's what our country is going. And that's what we fought against in the Civil War. But it's okay now for a woman to enjoy perfect polygamy. She just dumps this guy, gets another husband, dumps him, uses him, and that's polygamy. But the system has backfired on itself because men wanted monogamy.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something in there that my dad actually made the same argument a few weeks ago when I was talking to him, that nowadays you have the women who are, if you look at millennial women versus millennial men,
mm-hmm.
the women earn more. The women earn more than the men, and they have more education than the men.
Right. The
opportunity
is greater. It's just
right. So you see, there's a lot of factors. Yeah, there's a lot of factors to why that's the case. And I don't blame men for that, but basically when women have that role, they don't take the responsibility, like you just said.
Right.
Like, yeah, they may be in the position of having a higher income or owning a home, but they don't. It's like you said, it's really biological.
Yeah.
Yeah, women are not designed to lead. And you know what I mean? I don't know.
It's a harsh statement. I know it's a harsh statement, but that's what us Mgtows are here for, to unravel these harsh statements that need to be said.
Well, okay, look, this is the way women are, and if Mgtow are aware of this, women are essentially solipsistic.
Yeah.
The only thing a woman cares about is herself and her children. That's it.
Right. They don't.
And basically.
That's what make
So
us
they don't
teach.
they don't see this like greater society where we have a responsibility to each other. They see, okay, I got to do me and what's in it for me,
What's in it
you
for
know. And
right?
I think that's probably why a lot of our culture now is really kind of sociopathic. People really only care. People seem to generally only care about themselves and their immediate people around them. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So there has to be a culture change, and we know that. Where there's certain things that are being done now by even the MRA and Mgtow, like that "Make Women Great Again" thing. Have you seen that lately?
what does it make? What?
Make women great again. It's the mega hat with "Make Women Great," and it's like I don't think it's going to take a million years to program that in their epigenetics. Uh,
Yeah, it's really sad what feminism has done to women. It's basically teaching women that, oh, go get a degree, go get a career, and then when you're 35 years old, go out and meet the man of your dreams.
yeah,
And then you see all these women that they went and they got a master's degree and a PhD, and then you see them on a dating app saying, "Oh, I can't find a man that's where are all the good men at?" Blah 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 blah, and it's like,
well,
you're 35 years old. Like you should have already had like 4 kids by now. Like what
yeah.
what's going on? Like
Healthiest babies are born between it's like a disregarding of human biology. The healthiest babies are born between like 20 and 35, and it's like
exactly. Once a woman is over 30 years old, I think she's already lost 90% of her eggs or something like that. And
yeah,
your potential of having a child with Down syndrome or
right,
autism, it increases linearly with age of the male and the female.
yeah.
But it's
See them graphs going up nowadays, and we wonder why there's so much more autism and everything. Well, if scientists like myself like were able to say the truth, like this is what happens with your this is what happens in there, and don't take it, don't attack the messenger. I'm just telling you what happens when you get older and your genetics, and not that 89% of the 82% of the genes are duplicated by the male gene. But you're still not going to have a very healthy child after 45.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the really sad part about feminism is like, yeah, I'm not, I agree with what you say about feminism. Feminism is not the enemy,
It's not.
but
It's
one thing it, one thing it has done though is it has, and this is really a problem with the left in general, the political left,
yeah.
is it
Yeah.
teaches,
Talk about them.
and I'm not sitting here as I'm not sitting here as a like a hyper conservative right wing person.
Yeah.
I'm on the left politically. Okay, I believe we
Yeah.
should be community oriented. I don't think hyper unfettered capitalism serves people. I think private means of the ownership of production may have some place.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship, I don't think should be completely eliminated. But does it really make sense for one guy to have as much power as people do in our current society when the majority are suffering?
Right.
No, it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah. We have our first
But
trillionaires now, and it's like, I mean, what's his name from Amazon? He's basically a trillionaire now. It's like,
yeah, is he really worth that much money? Like people always make the argument, oh well, if you just work hard or you get a good degree, you could become rich just like him. And it's like, look, the guy, yeah, okay, Amazon is a good company. Like, yeah, I like getting my stuff delivered to me really fast. Okay, yeah,
great.
nobody's gonna disagree with that. But did Jeff Bezos really create Amazon?
No.
No, Jeff Bezos, yeah, he had some part in it,
You had
But
some
if he didn't have
government
hundreds of thousands, yeah, if government contracts like Bill Gates with Microsoft, but if Jeff Bezos did not have hundreds of thousands of workers
right.
doing the everyday work of Amazon, there wouldn't be an Amazon. So I don't know. It's so stupid.
Yeah, and he got the contract with the government for remember back the Onion. He his company created the Onion, and not the news source, but the way this internet works, and that's what he created, and then that's what he used to sell, and then plus Borders books, and it was all. But he got the government. He was the chosen one. He was chosen, not. And he set all that up because he had great managers and great people that had foresight in these things. But should we really have one of those? That's the question. In America, where at one time we deconstructed AT&T because we thought they were big.
Yeah, no kidding. And to answer the question you just asked, should we have one of those? What you're really asking is it necessary to have one person become astronomically rich beyond how much money they could ever spend in order to generate innovation? Because that's what people are saying. They're saying, oh no, the reason that he's so rich is because he innovated. He's so smart. He worked so hard. It's like, okay, look, first of all, if what you want is innovation,
Yeah,
I think there's probably a much better way to get that.
scientists.
I think yeah, and I think if okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, you didn't have one person getting incredibly rich off something because they got lucky. He had like a $300,000 loan from his parents to start out. All this stuff that his genetics, things he had absolutely no control over. Let's say we had a society that was designed to where I didn't have to worry that if I didn't show up to work, I would lose my job and I'd get kicked out of my house
Right.
or whatever. Let's say we had a society that actually cared for people, so people had that positive liberty where they could go spend their time doing things they loved and enjoyed.
Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, that society would have a lot more innovation. And for you get more innovation based on more people that are able to actually do things they care about. And you don't need to have this obscene profit motive, which people say, oh, well, humans are greedy by nature. So you have to have the profit motive. Otherwise, you don't get innovation. And I don't think that's a true argument.
Do you know Kuhn's argument on that?
No.
Kuhn and Feuerbach. I can't remember which one it was. Maybe it was Novich that said, okay, now look what happened with the AI. AI came around in the 80s, and then we got this AI, and the scientists that developed that were never really benefited from that. When they had the convention there, guess who showed up? Google and Amazon, and the corporations showed up. The scientists didn't show up. Now look at AI from what we have now to what we had then. It hasn't changed that much. So the corporations have been restricting it in sort of this way of what they do with everything. They restrict it, and it's what do you call that when you make a camera? It's 2 megabytes, and then the next camera comes out at 4 megabytes, and then the next camera, and then you got to keep buying the cameras.
Yeah, it's like kind of like planned obsolescence.
Planned obsolescence, right. So we have this planned obsolescence by these corporations that took over AI. Now they're just breaking us off little chunks of what we could have already have if the scientists were in charge. And that's where Kuhn's argument and the postmodern argument comes in. Why do we allow that? And it was the same AT&T thing. AT&T was holding back the cell phone on us. And then right after AT died, okay, we got the cell phone. That could have happened 10 years earlier.
Yeah, they're gonna keep giving us these cheap products that only last so long and are designed to make us go back and buy a replacement of it.
Yeah.
And
you know how many of those cameras I have? I got a whole drawer full of them.
Yeah, I this argument isn't original to me. I actually heard this argument from Peter Joseph, but think about this. Instead of having, Samsung compete with Apple, compete with Motorola, what if all those companies put their resources together and they weren't companies, they were,
Right.
de- national development agencies,
Right.
and they all pooled their resources and they, made the best possible phone they could instead of having all these weird ways of milking money out of people. What if the goal wasn't how do I increase the bottom line? Oh, well, we just go take our production to a third world country. That'll increase your profits. Or, what if the goal was how do we maximize the well-being of people? What if that was the goal?
Yeah, Canada has a law like that, and they were looking at a law that, like, for the people law. It's like when we make decisions in our Congress and our Senate, if it's not good for the people, and that's what what was his name, Oliver Wendell Holmes, the great judge, the great what was he? He was the philosopher, the pragmaticist, and he says what is good for the most people, and that's the decisions we should be making here in the Supreme Court. But that doesn't quite happen anymore. It seems to be actually the opposite. What is what's good for a few people that take care of the most amount of people, and that's a different scenario.
Can you restate that last sentence? You said good for a few people that take care of the most
Yeah,
people?
what is good for a few people that take care of the most people. So there's gatekeeping involved in this, and there's people being picked like Jeff Bezos.
Okay, I see what you're saying. The part about it that's throwing me off is you say take care of, because from my perspective, yes, we do have benefits in modern society. We get technology, we get some good stuff, but at the same time, in my opinion, things could be a lot better.
Yeah.
And second of all,
it's the idea of
we're not meeting the basic needs of our people.
Right. Yeah. When every time I see everybody screaming our jobs, and I'm like, all you're saying is you want slavery. It's work is slavery, and what you're really saying is you're dependent upon the milk of whatever comes down from the trickle down economy that Ronald Reagan had so much to do with. And a lot of people are just seeing that whole thing as a total failure nowadays.
Yeah, because what do they do? When you give them tax cuts, what do they do with it? Do they hire some people? Yeah, they might hire a few people, but the majority they do is they buy back their own stocks and they hide the money in offshore accounts.
Yeah, and
then Trump keeps going on and on about, oh, the stock market's so high, and unemployment is so low. First of all, the unemployment statistic has a lot of problems with it. People that we all know about that. I don't need to go into that. Yeah. But the stock market is not really a reflection of the general health of the economy. I listened to a Noam Chomsky video where he said that he basically said that when workers are forced to do a 401k in order to finance their own retirement because there's no like national pension or something like that, or it's not enough money, all of a sudden the worker is now cared about the stock market. When a worker probably wouldn't care about the stock market, but they care about the stock market. And what is the stock market? The stock market is the way rich people gamble off of corporate activity, right? In order to try to make money. So the workers really vote against their own interest because they want their 401k to.
I'm one of the
stock market doesn't.
I'm one of the rare people that worked for Mobil Oil at that time, and I lost my entire pension to Enron.
Wow.
So I should be, I want my $2.5 million I was promised right now, but it's not there no more. And then this lady, that's the remaining lady that her husband died since then just donated like $5 million to Donald Trump's campaign. And it's like, well, that was my $2.5 million.
Yeah. 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 And then look at the bailouts. You got all these millions of people lost their homes, and
In the same
the
manner,
banks were
just cleaning up.
The same way you got screwed out of your pension. They promise you this, and then they turn around and stab you in the back, and then they run off with the money.
And they ran up. Money just doesn't disappear. I was trying to, like, that money went somewhere. Where did that money went? Well, it went in it looked like it was failing, but that money was going somewhere. It didn't just disappear.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
then we bailed them out, so they got a double hit on that. And the economy, no wonder the economy is doing so great now, because they just made out like bandits, like robber barons on that whole thing.
Yeah, and
ran off my pension.
Yeah, exactly. And how many of them went to jail? None of them.
None of them.
Way back in the day, they would have been taken into the street, the middle of the town or whatever, and they would have had some consequences. That doesn't happen anymore. People, they just get away with murder nowadays.
Yeah, that's when the police stop enforcing the Constitution. The police stop and start enforcing the police, like it's the Hollywood thing. The police work for the Hollywood producers in Hollywood. Whatever their interests are, that's the police in your town will only come to see you if you owe this guy money, or they want to kick you out of your house. Otherwise, please don't call them, because you're probably going to go to jail.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really a good characterization of the system itself. The system is designed to protect the rich and powerful. And if you're a working class person, you're the milk, you're the blood that the parasite drinks from.
Yeah. I bought my new mask. Did you see that one? That's my bike riding mask.
Wow, that would probably scare some people.
That's gonna scare. Yeah, I was gonna do I was gonna record everything, and I'm doing a social thing, like what happens when people perceive fear. So there's a little more.
Their body starts to fill with cortisol. I know that.
Yeah, and then they'll make
fight or flight mechanism.
The social decisions they start making at that point? Would they get aggressive with me just by wearing that mask? Probably. I'm going to say
probably some of them.
Some of them are going to get aggressive. Some of them are going to call the police. It's not illegal to wear a mask, but I'm going to see. It's like it's the little social experiment I'm doing this month. Hope I don't get arrested.
Yeah, I hope you don't either. But you said you have a good relationship with the cops in your town, though, right? So
yeah, the cops are a little more.
Right.
They're a little more. I don't know what to say. They're just not cityized. They'll probably roll up and they'll start laughing.
That's good.
But in the city, they see what's behind that mask. Is he a robber, or is he a bandit? Is he a rapist? Them are the fear factors that I wanted to kind of get into to see what happens. Should be interesting.
Well, and that's actually kind of a good analogy for what working class people go through living in this society, because they are living
in
life on a razor's edge.
In fear.
It's like, oh, am I gonna get fired? Or what happens if my company goes out of business? What happens if if they have money in the stock market? What happens if the stock market crashes? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And working class people, they live in a state of constantly worrying.
Oh yeah.
And what does that do to your psychology and your physiology? You can't function.
Yeah, what are those things where I get hyper aggressive from things like that? And I notice that with females too. We we talk in terms of hypergamy. What is hypergamy? It's a hyper aggressiveness, and this is what's happening in our society when most people are worried about losing their houses. I mean, I worry about the IRS every day of my life. Should I have to? No, not really. I should. Yeah, at this point in my life, I should have a pretty good. My psyche should at least be happy. But I think from 8 to 80 in this society that we have, a lot has to do with Bernie's marketing and stuff, and how to market fear, and yellow journalism and that stuff is like, how do we keep everybody fearful? The Iranians, the coronavirus. You know what the cure for the coronavirus is? I was just laughing at that
What?
the other day. Some tomato soup, a blanket, and a hot shower. And I cured it. That was the same thing with SARS. The SARS, what was the cure for SARS? Yeah, some hot soup, a warm blanket, some rest, and a hot shower.
Yeah, I'm kind of amazed at all the explosion
Yeah.
of stuff on the internet about coronavirus, and
Oh yeah, it's the
I
fear
don't get it.
into us. The yellow journalism. It's like they got to keep all Americans on edge, and the American media thing. YouTube and Facebook and all the papers we have that keeps feeding it, and then they feed on that, and they don't care if who's the biggest terrorist in our country? The media is. I mean, they're terrorizing people every day. I mean, we should look
Oh,
at.
I completely agree.
I mean, they're the
You
big
know,
terrorists. They're making you unhappy. The old women staring out their window and thinking there's rapists everywhere out there now. No.
yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
And the actual statistics on rape is 1 in 1,600. You're probably never going to meet a female in your community that's been raped. I mean, if you do the actual statistics, the FBI statistics, you'll find that it's 1 in 1,685.
And we're told that 1 in 4 women on a college campus and something like that.
Yeah, and that's like that's regret sex and alcohol sex. Hey, if you don't want to go, don't go get drunk and go to those places where you have no control over your body, because yes, there will be predators, and that's men too.
Yeah.
Like I always say, men have to. The Mgtow is all about doing your introspection and cleaning up your side of the street on those things, and but it's not what it is. It's fear. It's pumping fear into our nation. It's like I seen that with my mother. God, she's watched those. What is those New York detective shows, crime scene investigations, and all those?
Yeah.
And it's like she would just
So she feels.
she should stare out the window, and she's like, "There's rapists everywhere." And his mom, "There's not rapists everywhere, and you're totally safe here with me." It's like you're so safe that you're the safest anybody's ever been in this world. Why don't we tell people that?
Well, yeah. Well, that's it. That's the truth, and that's one problem you always run into when you try to be critical of capitalism is that right now we're doing pretty good, by a lot of
Some standard.
ways to assess. But so that's usually people will throw that back at you if you try to be critical of capitalism and say like, oh, you live in America,
They don't like the socialized system, but we have a socialized police system where we have 22,700 police departments around. Who pays for that? Well, socially, we pay for that. That's socialism.
Yeah, and they all have pensions and they're all in unions and
everybody's taken care of. That works out pretty good. It makes your city, but it's like celebrate that and say, man, we have 22,740 police stations in America, and every American is safe. Instead of celebrating that, we let the yellow journalism pump fear into our Man, what a horrible, horrible thing to do. We should start, man, if I was President God, I'd be like, okay, anybody that says that anymore, he's going to go to jail because he's just a liar and he's a terrorist.
Oh, absolutely. And what?
By the way, I am running
So
for God.
you would probably do a good job at it.
Yeah.
But we should I think every American should have that level of security that a police officer has. Every American should be able to. Okay, I'm going to make a statement that's going to sound pretty extreme. Every person in this country that is an adult,
Yeah,
should have access to reasonable housing.
reasonable.
And that doesn't mean living in crammed in a house with 6 other people just so you guys can afford it. That means your own little dwelling that's yours. Whether that's a small house or an apartment, every single person should be able to have access to that. Every single person should be able to have access to money. Every single person should be able to have access to education, healthcare. And me saying that right now, that's an extreme position in the United States of America.
You know what the cure for homelessness is? $50 billion.
Home.
Yeah, $50 billion in a basic income. That's nothing.
Well, and one of the big problems that I think happens when implementing these things is, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but the way the modern leftists operate creates roadblocks.
Yeah.
So like if I go to like a leftist forum or something on the internet right now, and I say, hey, universal basic income is a good idea, and everybody should have access to housing. The first thing that they were going to want to bring up is, okay, so you want to have white people and black people access the same universal basic income. Well, what about reparations? And white people are already benefiting from white privilege, so we can't enact your policy because it disproportionately benefits white people. And so we don't have this like solidarity that we need.
Get the vote from the same white people because they've been eliminated from it, and they know they will be.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like the left is so divided by identity
that they do a lot of
the left is
really hypocritical like that.
And so how are we supposed to make progress? We can't even unite on the left because like I'm a white guy. If I've literally had a person, I was trying to talk to them about like being critical of capitalism, and I was speaking to a black woman, and she goes, oh, all white people are racist. And I'm like, what? I'm like, so wait. I'm like, well, wait. So you think I'm racist too? And she's like, yeah, you're racist. And I'm like, well, why am I racist? She's like, because you're white.
Genetic.
And I'm like,
yeah. Oh, that's part of.
How are we supposed to move forward?
Yeah, inherent racism when it's passed down from generation to generation somehow. But man. There's so many easy cures for this, but you ever listen to Tom Hartman?
Yeah.
Okay, he's one of my favorite places to go on the left, and he is as progressive as he thinks he is. When I come around there as a Mgtow and say, how we can cure everything? Get rid of these marriage courts, get rid of these, do away with marriage altogether, do away with all these religious systems. And then all of a sudden he turns into a conservative because he's married. It's that hypocrisy in that. If he's benefiting from the system, it's no longer, he's all of a sudden he's a conservative on that. And I see that with a lot of my friends when I talk about we need to get rid of this marriage system. The feminists are right. People shouldn't be getting married. There's no bonding thing there. There's no just get rid of the whole system from top to bottom, and get rid of all that religious ideas, them stupid, absurd ideas, that absurdism that Camus talked about. It's like we get rid of that, and then we have a truly equal system then. But when you start talking about the liberals on the left, they want that marriage, they want that traditional, and I'll say, well, that's traditional conservatism. To be a progressive, you have to think like me. And then, oh, no, we're not going to go that far. Son of a bitch. And then on the right, we have the trad cucks. On the left, we have these hidden hypocrites. And it's like, what does it take to get these people to understand?
Yeah, I wish we could have unity. I wish we could be more progressive in the sense that every single person is considered. We don't just break it up into these groups. And the right and the left are both guilty of it. Because if you go to the extreme, there's extreme. Like we should have ethno states and stuff like that, but then there's also the other side where it says, okay, everybody's marginalized except white people. Therefore, any kind of talk about economic progress cannot include white people. So it's like it seems to be very difficult to make progress in that regard, in terms of saying, hey, look, we're all economically suffering,
Right.
But I would be accused right now of being an economic reductionist. That's what they call it.
Yeah, an economic.
But so
no, this goes.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. You say, work is slavery.
Work is slavery.
Marriage is work. Marriage is slavery for the man.
Marriage,
and
constitutional rights of a male, by saying that he has to give his money and work for free in a system that's commerce to another person when they're already taking that money for taxes, so they double hitting them. That's ridiculous. That's absurd. The Health and Human Service system that gets that $4 trillion a year, and maybe it's up to $6 or $8 trillion, they should be taking care of everyone equally. And that includes the baby mamas that just don't want to be involved in a religious system of marriage. But that's who we have that system for. And if we didn't, but we turn around and it's what I call chasing our alms. We chase our alms and we need someone to blame that on. So we blame it on the male. He was the responsible party. He's the father. And that's so untrue. That's a social construct. Wow.
One thing, can you break that down for me a little bit further about how there's no such thing as a father? I think I remember you one time explaining it where you said something like, it goes back to sexual cryptis, where back in tribal days, they didn't know who the father was, and
the woman wants the benefits in the very biological thing of sexual cryptis. She wants the benefits of all the males. She's free to go around with whoever she wants. There's no monogamy. There's no polygamy, but there's no monogamy. She's just free to do what she wants. And then she has a baby. The system picks her up, and then that's the Health and Human Services that we have now. The system picks her up and doesn't complain about it, and nobody knows who the father is. Because genetically, she's only taking a copy of your genetics. There's nothing of you as a father in that baby. She's making a baby. She's being responsible. She found agency in that, and it's 100% her responsibility then. Just because she picked a genetic donor doesn't make him responsible. The word father is pator or pedor in the Latin. It means the responsible party. It's a social construct. It's not that we actually make. I often say the line Al Bundy said, "All masculinity was lost the first time one guy said we're having a baby," because we're not having a baby. She's having a baby. She made that decision. It was 100% her responsibility, accountability, 100% her choice. Yes means yes, no means no. Every law that we have in our society, gender law, promotes that sexual cryptis until we get to the point where they want to, until she falls on welfare, and we have these the welfare system from the 90s with the Newt Gingrich system was like, oh, those bad baby mamas, and these Christians come in again and they say, oh, these bad baby mamas, we're just going to, and then what they really do is they hold the father responsible, or the presumed father, which isn't a father at all. He's just a donor. And
So the basically the argument boils down to the the baby is genetic material created by the mother,
by the mother.
and so what percentage of the baby's genetic makeup is the father?
Now, if you're talking genetic makeup is a social scheme, it's the father's genetic makeup makes up 82% of that baby, but that's just because she took a picture of your genetics, not because your genetics are in that baby. Nothing of you is in that baby. After the two first cells split, it's totally 100% her, and the cell that you actually donated dies.
Wow.
Nothing of you is that. She just took a picture of your genetics. That's what the genetics started multiplying, because it had something to multiply with. It's sexual cryptis. We used to understand this system, but somewhere with religion and fathers and who is going to be responsible, we got it all confused. We don't have it that far confused. We have a system of altruism that takes care of every human, at least in America, of welfare. Well, let's start using our welfare properly and not chase our alms. And if we were talking to the Jesus people, Jesus himself said, don't chase your alms, bitch. And that's what we do when
So
what do they do with the alms they chase? Now we look at Dershwin's social fact. Are you familiar with Dershwin's social fact?
no.
Where altruism starts here, say this is altruism, and it goes straight over to the recipients. And there's not much cost in there, but in our social fact, it goes up in a triangle to the government. The government taps off of that, builds their buildings, starts a marriage system, uses 2/3 of that money, and it trickles down. And then they complain about having to give it to the baby mamas. Now, if you did away with that whole marriage system, it would go straight over to and cost us 1/3 of the amount. And we wouldn't have these Gothic buildings of authoritarianism. But the government likes that because they get their lighter than air work. And now they don't have to participate in the economy because they have this lighter than air work that they rely on, and they don't have to participate in agriculture and the energy of the system. They don't have to do those jobs. That's where the slave jobs come from. Okay, now they still have their slave class, which is 20 to 30% that they give to men like me and you because we got a divorce and violated their system, or we're buying into this whole absurd concept of fatherhood, which is not real. Now you see how absurd that is?
Absolutely, yeah. The way you describe it is really intriguing to me.
We can cut costs by 2/3 in taxes by just go down to the local library. You type in your you automize the whole system, no humans in it and everything. You type in your social security money number. You tell them how much you made, and then they says you deserve welfare or you don't deserve welfare. And it costs hardly anything. It costs 1/3 of the amount that it would have cost if people weren't chasing their alms and having this religious system of fatherhood.
Okay, so let's say you were the architect of the future economy,
Okay.
and you've identified this problem, which is, first of all, it starts with these belief systems which are divorced from reality, and then those get projected into these, authoritarian structures where you have this elite class of, bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
and it's very inefficient, and it doesn't serve the population. And so, how would you describe your ideal economic system? Because we've already pointed out a lot of problems with our current system.
Now
Is the current system?
that's when I become a Maoist. Everybody,
Yeah, I've heard you say that before. You say basically like
8 years on the farm or 8 years in a distribution system that gets food to other people. And if we all did our fair share, you can retire after 16 years and have your house, get paid for, everything would start working better. And then everybody would have a job for this amount of time. But that's when that's when the capitalists they'll never allow it. They'll never allow it. You work, say, 6 years on the farm, then you move to you make plows, you move to industrial, you move up, you become a manager, and that last step, the golden parachute or the silver parachute, is you transcend into the system, the profits of the system, after maybe 20 years, and then you retire. But you're doing your part. There's so many people that don't do their part. Those people in the government systems don't do their part. Our president has never did his part. He's never worked on the farm.
right, and his dad didn't do his part either. His dad just basically was a scam artist.
Do their part, that don't want to work in a grocery store, that don't want to do the farming, that don't want to do the transportation, the truck driving necessary to get the food to the people and build the houses, the proletariat jobs. The only reason the argument exists is because they don't want to do their part, because them jobs are too hard for them. They believe that they're above that.
So basically, what we would do
Get rid of
is we would cut out the parasites.
Cut out the parasites.
And then we'd say, okay, we've stopped the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
So now we got our blood back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure the blood pumps everywhere in the body instead of having these one parts atrophy,
right.
Because this one part's greedy and wants 5 times as much blood.
Right.
And so somebody turns 18, well, they get a house given to them. This is your house.
Yeah.
This is where you're going to work.
And
you have to work 16 years.
Yeah.
And if you say, well, I don't want to do it, well, then I guess you get, thrown in prison or something. But people are not going to say no in that system.
No.
People are going to say, oh,
years in retirement.
They're going to say, oh, yeah, they're going to say, wow, this is a great deal. I get to do socially necessary work.
Right.
I get treated with dignity and respect. And all my needs are met.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's a perfect solution.
And all we have to do is start with getting rid of the religious systems that were the last tenet of the barbarism that we didn't settle in the Civil War, which was we let the Christians take over the system, and they disposed with the Mormons over monogamy. And that should never be, these systems of divorce should never be in our system. Once we do away with those systems, the savings will be phenomenal. We don't have the, divorce in court.
Oh, yeah.
And that comes down to every single man understanding that that's not my woman. I don't own her. If she wants to be with me, that's fine. But if she don't want to be with me,
we don't need some government contract.
Right.
Say, oh, sign this piece of paper and you're married. And if you do something wrong, well, guess what? You're in trouble. It's like, hey, look. Like my sister just got divorced, and it cost them $5,000 to get divorced.
Yes.
And luckily for them, they had a peaceful divorce. Not like my dad. My dad had 2 divorces where he got dragged through court mercilessly. But still, $5,000? Are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah. We don't need that system. All we need to do is and I know it's these guys, they want traditionalism, but think about what you're signing up for when you want that traditionalism, that Disney dream, that wife in the kitchen that's half naked and cooking you food. You're asking her to play a traditional role. She's asking you to play a traditional role, which is bullshit. And then the government comes in, and that's where all of our problems stem from. I don't care what the women's do. I want them to be I want them to be happy, healthy, free, and making good money so they can participate in the system. And that would
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
like, I'm not a jealous person. There's not really a jealous bone in me. And it's like, if a woman wants to be with me and she wants to have that baby, it doesn't make me the father. It just makes me, happy that she wanted to be with me. And there's no,
Yeah,
it's still her decision. She spread her legs. She made that choice. She made, yes, she's going to have a baby. She's going to participate in that system of commerce. And it's like, great. I love that system. I love Joe's system. I hate the system we have now.
yeah, same here. And you say like what you said about a minute ago. You said, um, what are they signing up for? And my take on it is that I agree with what you said, but I would add another dimension of it too. What I think in our society, people jockey for position
Mm-hmm.
and they want to feel like they're superior to
Right.
somebody.
Right.
So for a lot of people, it's like, oh, I make this much income, I'm married, I've all these other arbitrary things like I'm a Chad, I've had all these sexual
Yeah.
partners,
Like that
who
horrible
and these are
Stepford wife thing.
yeah, and it's like so for them, it's really a way for them to double down on their opinion of their own superiority. And really, that's a function of the system we have now because our system tells you that the hierarchy is a reflection of people's intelligence or contribution when we've already shown in this conversation that that's not the case.
That's not the case.
But the system you're proposing though would, in my opinion, people would have more pure motives
Right.
because it would be a more egalitarian society.
Totalitarian
So
system too.
we wouldn't have this impetus to have these stupid arbitrary measurements on who is better than somebody else.
Yeah.
And even if we did recognize excellence, which I'm sure we would, say, oh, this person's a great athlete, this person's a great artist. We would recognize their talent, but that wouldn't mean that they get 5 times as many resources as everybody else. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And LeBron James, doesn't get like, he just, he doesn't get, and the way it works out anyways, he's not having any more kids than anybody else. It's like,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous. The 80-20 rule always bothers me too. It's like when they start quoting the 80-20 rule, I says, no, in my life, I've discovered that diversity is everything in a woman's opinion on your beauty. And if she's looking for what you are diverse, I'm Irish. If she was born like diverse to that, she'd be looking at me as that beauty, and that would be it. It's so much more complicated than men. That 80-20, like everybody wants. No, every woman doesn't want Matthew McConaughey. Every woman doesn't want to be with.
Yeah.
So I've had tens in my life that I just looked at and I just decided I don't want to be with this woman because she reminds me too much of me. It's like
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
The kissing your sister analogy. Well, you don't want to kiss your sister because you see the genetics, the diversity you don't want to kiss your sister because the diversity is not fulfilled and you'll have a retarded kid. You know that as a human.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a wisdom in our biology, that's people, we know these things in a visceral sense, on a deep genetic sense, and in my opinion, the modern slave society we have of economic slavery
Mhm.
and slavery by proxy through divorce courts and all that crap, that's really a deviation
They're
from
eating.
our natural state of being.
Yeah, it's a deviation from the natural state of being, like you said. They're fighting with biology because somehow they don't like biology. They want to manipulate biology. It's like, no, man, go with the flow. Humans were created perfectly. Go with the flow. You'll be 10 times happier, and you'll be 10 times better off if Joe's system existed, because I see how this system should work. Man, our communities would be so
Yeah, and
it would be if males ever stopped being jealous and just started like, okay, you know, whatever one comes up, if she wants to, that's great. If she doesn't want to, I'll spend my time working on cars and shit. Meanwhile, because the default position of most males without hypersexual drive is asexuality. When I'm here,
yeah, exactly. You know,
I'm not thinking about that. And I shouldn't be thinking about that. When I'm at work, I'm not thinking about that because I shouldn't be thinking about that. Now, we know there's a sickness in our society now that most men are in hyperdrive. All these incels are like, I got to get, you know, that's the biggest thing in my life is validating myself through that conquest. And then they buy into that traditional system that's awful. It's horrible. It's a lie.
yeah, I agree. I completely. Yeah, you're right about that. You know, there's um, we tell these stories. You know, these fiction. You know, like you say, the final fictionalism, where people are doing things that are unnatural because we've been given these value systems, you know, through propaganda and brainwashing and,
Capitalist
you know,
religious system that we were talking about. It starts from there and ends with there. And I mean, there's a lot more that plays into it, but man, people got to wake up. And that's what the red pill, I thought people were waking up. Nowadays, yesterday I was so depressed after listening to the Mgtow videos, and most of it was traditionalism. And they were trying to sell traditionalism as the cure. It's like, that was never Mgtow. Mgtow was about embracing your biology, your freedom.
yeah, it's I see it. I see it on forums I go on too. It's, you know, why aren't you married yet? Why don't you have kids yet? And it's just like, I don't want kids. I don't want to get married. I don't want to play that game, you know. And it seems to be like a big meme right now, you know, pushing this traditionalist and, you know,
Traditional,
you got to make babies. And it's like,
traditional
Mgtow is supposed to.
they're manipulating the biology of the people, and they're telling you lies about what's going to happen. Them are the roles they want, so they can tap off resources and utility from men.
And you know, it's funny they call it traditional, but these systems developed just a few thousand years ago, and humans have been around a lot longer than that.
Yes,
You know, and we spent most of our time, and some people in the chat, this might be this might be the first time that they've heard this phrase, but humans have spent the majority of their evolutionary history in primitive communism,
yeah,
meaning we had societies that were egalitarian in nature, where everybody's needs were met, and we've punished antisocial behavior and we rewarded pro-social behavior. They were also called gift giving economies,
yeah.
you know, where, you know, the person that gets a good reputation, which people really didn't have bad reputations because there wasn't everybody was equal. So anyways, the point is that the behavior that was promoted is pro-social behavior, so doing something for somebody else. This whole traditional notion of, well, I gotta section off this area that's mine, and I gotta have a wife and kids in that area, and I gotta achieve this standard of making all this money and
For,
being somebody, you know, like that. That's the deviation. That's
it's the deviation.
non-traditional.
I promote a book. It's Nesbitt and Cohen's Southern Violence. If you ever read it, you probably took the course if you in college at some time. If you wanted to take the course, it's Joey. He was like, wow, I couldn't believe how much they had to do with Mgtow. And it says, yeah, so hurting cultures is the reason we think like we do now, because you had to section that off. You had to make your farm, and then you had to take care of your woman, and then that brought that responsibility from father in. And then it's grown to something
Yeah.
really evil. And then jealousies occur when another predator comes on in the form of another male, and then you have to kill him. So plows become swords.
Wow. Wow. That's really interesting. Yeah, and it's like you said, these come from this belief in a fiction of owning another person.
Owning another.
It's like no, if we were in a rational society, we would mate with somebody and enjoy each other's company and maybe produce a child. But if one of the people wanted to go leave and be with somebody else, it wouldn't be a big deal.
It would be a big deal. You'd move
You know,
along. You go, okay, can I stop by once in a while and do for the kid because I may love him? And that would be great. It's a voluntary fatherhood. And then you become a voluntary
yeah, and I think
mentor, like supposed to happen.
and I think that if we had a system where there was more sexually liberal in that sense,
Yeah.
I think even the people who nowadays would maybe identify as like an incel or something like that, they would probably have more access to sex.
They have more access,
because
like themselves.
yeah, it's because it was like you said, the female, they have a very wide range of what appeals to them, just like males do as well. It's biology. And so, if you have this freedom of movement in the sexual marketplace, well, hey, you be with this girl for a few years, you guys go your own way, then another woman comes along and, just whatever, I think everybody would be a lot happier that way.
A lot happier. And it would be, man, it's the, we get back to the garden. Jealousy and, like I said, that the tenets of barbarism was they thought it was polygamy, but it was really monogamy and polygamy. They just switched it and said, okay, monogamy is going to be better, but it wasn't. And it worked out with these terrible laws that are barbaric now to men. And the same barbarism they were arguing about 160 years ago still exists in a different name, but call it by any name. A turd is still a turd. You can call it anything you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made this argument. You made it in kind of a different context, but you said that basically, the working class men, the 20-30% of slave men, they were given this promise of monogamy. So it's like, hey, look, you can have this woman, she's supposed to make you happy in your otherwise miserable existence.
Yeah.
And if you go back to like, basically economic inequality really begins when you have agriculture, because before agriculture, people were nomadic. You didn't have an opportunity to accumulate stuff. You had homogenous tribes that would have, like I said, these primitive communist types of economies. And so once you have this agriculture come into the picture,
Right.
that's I would argue that that's probably when you see this monogamy and this religious stuff start coming into play, because the elites realize, the people who controlled the food,
Right.
they probably realize, well, hey, we gotta placate these slaves, so let's make up a story about heaven and hell and making the gods angry, and and then let's create a form of institutional marriage where if they go outside of that contract, there's punishment, and it just keeps everybody corralled. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's exactly what they do, and it's I know the cure to it, but how do you get men? We talk about them all the time. They're the jealous men, the simps, the beggars, the white knights. We have names for each one of them. The cackling hyena. How do you get to them to buy into the system where they don't own a female?
Yeah, that's it's hard because they're blinded by their ideology. They think, I'm this big bad person that created my life. I was able to carve out a life for myself. I have a reasonable income. I have a family. So they identify with this system. They, like you said, what the benefactors of the system are going to defend the system.
Right.
So what I've always approached, if you look at my videos on YouTube, you'll see that I'm basically always talking about either a philosophical concept or a economic concept, and they basically almost always are my subject of all my videos are basically addressing economic injustice and pointing out how our system promotes economic injustice. But like you said, it's difficult to talk to people about it unless they have already taken the red pill on it, for example, because like you, for example, because they are completely blinded by their attachment and benefit within the system. And so if you tell them, well, hey, if our society was more equal and we didn't have all these parasites sucking people's life out of them, that's a better system for everybody. What they hear when you say that is, I'm better than you, you're worse than me, and you're trying to take from me. That's all that they hear.
Right. I just want to I gave Joey the first wrench in a long time around here. So use it properly, Joey. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many better ways to do it, but how do I explain to the Mike Pence, the guy in power, he would freak if he listened to this, he would freak out. It would violate everything he's ever been taught. But that's Mgtow. Mgtow violates everything you've ever been taught in your life. It's what the red pill is about. It's about coming into this world where you see things honestly, and the absurdity of things, and how do you get that traditional light to embrace real truth?
Yeah, and that's a problem because, like you said, even the Mgtow philosophy, which started out, more about people seeing the reality of the system. Now it's more like, okay, let's go back into the system and use this sort of pseudo language of Mgtow to
Mm-hmm.
justify these traditionalist systems.
Yeah, we could use the postmodern language and everything, but in a sense, he's walking hypocrisy, because he'll be the same guy that'll blame. He's the same guy that's gonna blame the female for. He becomes the beneficiary of the system, so he's getting all the gifts and stuff. But he'll say, "Oh, all these baby mamas are getting gifts," and I hate that when they say that they're getting gifts, and the systems become the daddy. Yes, the systems become daddy, and she's getting gifts. But hey, at the top of your system, there's gifts and benefits that are being paid out to these traditional people, and they don't want to give up their gifts either. They don't want to, they don't want to give up that traditional system because it benefits them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same hypocrisy.
You know what? One of the things that really struck me recently was I recently learned that married people with children get tax benefits,
Yeah, they get taxed.
which single people don't get.
Yeah, I took it.
So basically, single people are basically subsidizing married people's.
And
Yeah, it's crazy.
The biggest fear of my life, the reason I might lose this house someday, this my third house totally paid for, is because on the way out, she manipulated the tax system, which made me the responsible party. And it grew to such a maximum amount I could not pay it through that divorce system. Isn't that suck?
Wow.
Which goes back to what we were originally talking about, the feudal system of how they take houses, how men become that guy back there. I still might become that at my age. I still might become that guy back there. And the government's going to do it to me. The government, I fought for. I'm a veteran. I worked 35, 40 years. I was the slave. I was the veteran. I was the guy. They're going to take my house because they screwed me over with taxes.
Wow. Yeah, I had to pay. I don't know how much money you owe, but I had to pay a little over $4,000 last year in taxes of basically I hadn't filed my taxes since like 2011,
Mm-hmm.
and I filed my taxes last year and I had to pay like over $4,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that grows quite fast, doesn't it? What was the original amount? Like $400 or something? 300?
Well, there was actually only 1 year 2 years that I owed, and the original amount was like 2,000.
2000, yeah. Now my original amount was 7,000. That became 16,000, which became I paid 21,000, and then with all the with all the what do they call them? The fines and fees and interest and everything. I still owe them some obscene amount, and I've already paid it back 3 times over.
Damn. Yeah, that can be really scary. You're worried about what can, what if I get some notice in the mail today, or
What
you know?
at my age, the biggest stress in my life. Everything else is taken care of. The biggest stress in my life is my government making me homeless. After I fought for
Wow.
the country, after I worked for so many years, after I was the guy, the Mao guy on the farm, making sure everybody ate. I did that term, and I did making sure everybody has electric term, and making sure everybody has. I'm an electrician. I worked in an oil factory, which I made sure everybody had energy. So I did my 3 terms. And what would be a Maoist system, which I would be the exalted male. It's like, you get to retire now, but I still can't retire. And then they stole my money from my retirement policy in the Enron system. Do you think I hate this country? This country has been the biggest. It's been the biggest liar and cheater in my life, and the biggest liar to me, from marriage to how they treated me, when I got sick, how they treated me, with my retirement money, how they let rich people steal that from me, and they never once went after one of them. Our government did that to me, and they do that to this guy. That's why that guy is sitting there. He probably paid for 2 houses in his life. That system of feudalism that lets the rich people own 10 mansions. Do you think of the
Yeah.
hypocrisy of somebody owning 10 mansions by the shore, when each one of those mansions represents basic living conditions like this for thousands of people? The hypocrisy.
Yeah.
The
And
hypocrisy.
for most of the year, they're completely empty for most of the year.
I see this all up through I live on the North Coast on Lake Erie, and up on the lake is the most. People come to vacation so they can do the walleye fishing and have their own beach and have private beaches and stuff. As I ride down into Cleveland once in a while, I just look at those houses. They're castles. And when I look over the river, that's all I got to do is look over the river, and I see how it changes for me. Somehow, I didn't deserve it. And when I did everything right in the society, except these traditional laws, I violated traditional laws that aren't real laws. That it's like aren't naturalistic, at least. They're social constructs.
Yeah, and all your life, you were just doing the right thing.
For doing
You
the
were
right
just
thing. I made
showing up at your job, trying to take care of your woman, trying to take care of your kids, and then you know
I did
you have these
everything they
people
said
take advantage.
I had to do to be that guy that was going to make it. I did every one of those steps perfectly. And still, You get back, it's like that bridge to nowhere they talk about. You get to the end of the bridge, it empties you out in the forest. You're like, fuck, what's this? Yeah, got you. It was all a lie. It was all a lie.
Yeah, and I don't. It's so sad that, you know, how many men have been chewed up and swallowed out and spit out by this economic
Yeah.
and legal system, and that people still defend this system. You know, they act like, well, the system is just so great. You know, if something bad happened to you, it must be because you're a bad person.
That's what
You know, it seems like nobody wants to acknowledge that it's the system that's broken. It's not the
somehow
people.
you're not good enough. When they start picking winners and losers, there's always got to be somehow you're not good enough. That, and then that's what they'll tell you for the rest of your life. Somehow you made some mistake. Somehow you didn't pick the right girl. Somehow you did no. These traps, these laws are just traps. And I didn't make a mistake. I never made a mistake in my life. But somehow I wasn't good enough.
Yeah, it's by design. You know, it's designed to screw you over.
Now in Joe's system, there wouldn't be none of that. It'd be
No.
even 10 times better. Everybody would be so freaking happy. There'd be beer parties in the park. Imagine.
Heck yeah.
Talk about utopia. Put in my system in place. There'd be a utopia around the world. People be cheering. That's why you should vote for me for God.
You got my vote.
Yeah, since I do this thing every morning, I sit down. It's my 2 minutes with coffee, I call it. And a lot of the guys laugh at it. I go, okay, God, come on down. We got to talk. There's some systems that are out of place and we got to fix this. Me and you, we'll do it. And then after 2 minutes, I finish my coffee and go, okay, God, since you're not going to come down, I'll take that chair. I'll sit in that chair because I have to. I have to. That's what.
Well, and you know, I always thought that was one of the best arguments against Christianity is you just look around at what we have here, and you know that God has either he's abdicated from his responsibility, or he doesn't care, or he's sadistic. One.
Yeah, the three.
So
yeah, he's a jealous God, or he advocated from his. He doesn't care. He's a deadbeat dad. He's the same hypocrisy
exactly.
you accuse people of. It's like, whatever it is, I don't care. It's like I'll do my 2 minutes in the morning as my my religion, and it's like I give them a chance for 2 minutes in the morning, every morning, and I'm meticulous at my 2 minutes. But man, all the you know, as I say, the worst things in life will come to us free. All those things will be free to you. All those traps that they offer up, they're all going to be free, and all you're going to do is say, "Hey, I want that V." Somehow, I'm going to take responsibility for that. Somehow, yeah, I'll buy into their system if I just get that. And that's where most men go. The incels are whining every day because they can't get that. I said, go buy into that traditional system. It'll leave you vacant.
Exactly. It's like you really know what you're signing up for.
You really know what you're signing up
or what you're
for slavery. I think we went through the whole system of capitalism, how it works today, how it works out in your disadvantage, and it's like there's a better system, and I know it resembles a primal socialist system, like you said, and I like that words. But my system's more of a hippie system. I was born a hippie too. It's like, I mean, don't get jealous. Don't demand things from the girls that you wouldn't want for yourself. You know, everybody get along. We all do our part, and we'll have a good world. But we can't have.
well, that's natural, you know, because you know if you leave people alone, you know, you don't force them to do shit they don't want to do. They're basically going to form a type of a hippie system. They're going to want to drink on the weekends. They're going to want to smoke a little bit of weed. They're going to want to have some sex.
Yeah.
They're going to want to work as little as possible. That's natural.
Possible. You do your part, but you don't. You still keep some. I have to do my 6 years on a farm. I have to do my 6 years in electric or whatever in energy. I have to build houses or build something. So I do a part in that system. So I deserve that then. We all do that anyways. But their authoritarian system is usually, yeah, you got to all do your part. And then he walks away, except for me, telling you, shame.
Exactly.
Yeah, to do your part. That's shame. It's like, except for me, that's what Trump said he wanted. He was complaining about the least expensive system, the system of what was it, agriculture, of feeding poor people. And he was like, this cost us too much, but it only costs like 2% or something. And then he was like, you all got to get to work. And then I looked at him and I said, that son of a bitch ain't never worked a day in his life and never participated for the 6 years on in any kind of agriculture. And he's complaining. He's the guy that's not doing the job.
Exactly.
Inability to look at himself. That's what we have. We have a lot of people out there with the inability to do that introspection and say, maybe I'm the guy that's not doing, and I'm the cheater. Okay, have we come to the end?
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna jump out. You know, um, I'm gonna get ready for work and tomorrow. And it was
Sorry.
really nice talking to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you. So, capitalism, I don't know, it could work but there's other systems that rely on it. Well, what would be your analogy on what we have to do as men? Your outro.
Well, I think as men, we need to identify the main culprit in
Mhm.
where these problems come from and have solidarity with other men.
Yeah.
I think one of the one of the big problems that men have, I think, is that we are driven to be competitive with other men, to have this, like, forgive my language, but like a,
The tournament.
whatever measuring contest. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm so great. And you see it in, like, some people, they'll brag like, oh, well, I'm a computer programmer and I got a STEM degree and you just got a worthless liberal arts degree, so you should be homeless or something. You know what I mean? Like that's not the way we should be talking to each other. So I think identifying the source of the problem and having solidarity and just doing our best to make ourselves happy in our own life, and realizing that we don't have to sign up for slavery.
You don't have to. There's a better way than that. And that's it. And I'm gonna do my outro. And Mgtow has the cure. We just gotta apply those red pills that we learn and think about them the right way. And Mgtow has a real place on this universe because we kind of see it now. And when every man becomes a little bit Mgtow, I think we'll start seeing this thing change. And it's up to each and every one of you guys in the chat to get out there and find that one guy that you can change, because you become the progenitor of a more beautiful thing in the future here. It's your responsibility. And if we let them beat this out of us, this traditionalism thing is going to last 100 more years. You're going to pass it down to your children and their children, and it's going to, horror will multiply. And every year the horror multiplies, that's the bigger war that's going to be at the end. And it's going to be a horror, but each and every Mgtow has this part to end that horror right now. And we just got to keep going. It's up to each and every one of you guys and me to just do Mgtow a little bit and think about these things in a more honest sense. Stop being jealous. Stop being that white knight. Stop being that simp. So, all your Simpsons are forgiven now too, by the way. Go on with your life. Stop doing all that stuff, and stop whining, complaining about, the baby mamas and everything. It's up to you to create a bold new world. And that starts with each and every one of you. And with that, thanks for being Mgtow. Mgtows.